Management high availability. In this nugget, we're going to discuss deploying a secondary Smart Center server in our organization to provide some redundancy and some backup capabilities should we lose a Smart Center server due to a natural disaster or just to a simple crashing of that particular operating system, for example. As part of this nugget, we will discuss why do we need management HA, and then we will look at some management concepts for HA on how to configure everything and the reason why we need to set up a management HA concepts for sure. And then we will get into the management HA configuration where we will set up a secondary management server on the command line as well as getting it integrated fully into the GUI of our smart dashboard application. I really think you're going to enjoy management HA, so take some notes, and it's really going to be powerful in helping you provide redundancy and security control in your organization. So let's discuss management HA. Well, let's say, for example, on a Friday, you're sitting at your office, you're looking at the window and thinking about your wonderful weekend ahead when the unthinkable happens. A complete power outage. Everything goes black around you. You grab your flashlight and you run down the hall as quickly as you can to your server room. Well, you open the door to your server room, and then you see that all the servers in this room are spinning up at a great fashion. They all have orange lights on them, indicating that they've lost one of their power supplies. And as you can imagine, the fans are screaming at the top of their lungs, and you can barely hear. You run over to your battery backup system, and you notice you have about 20 minutes before your power is totally exhausted for your data center or your server room, for example. So you begin to shut down your important servers, your database server, as well as your domain controllers, as well as your BlackBerry server and your Exchange server, and everything that's important to the infrastructure side and the business side of your organization, and you run out of time. Within that 20 minutes, your Smart Center server powers down abruptly. So after about an hour or so, the power company comes out and they find out that there was a squirrel in the line. So they remove the squirrel from the line and they get the power restored to the building. So you begin to bring up all the servers, you get everything up and running again, and everything looks fine. And then you go to boot your Smart Center server. And what happens? Well, it goes to boot up and you get to a grub menu. It's sitting at that grub menu and it's not going any further. So you try to reboot it, and again, you get the grub menu and it doesn't boot any further. So you know at that point, if you're a diligent Checkpoint certified security administrator, you've made your CP backups, you've made your upgrade exports, and you know you could restore your Smart Center server in a matter of about 30 minutes. But as you can imagine, in the middle of a power outage like this, it's going to be a madhouse. Your cell phone is going to be getting 4 calls at once from your manager and from your director, as well as your CIO. And you pick up the phone and you say, "Hello, Mr. CIO." And he says, "Hey, Bob, as you know, we had a power outage in our organization, and we have some partners that are very concerned about their critical financial data. I need you to spin up an emergency VPN account for these 3 individuals at these different companies and be able to allow them to connect to our network in order to check out their data." You don't want to be in this situation. To be able to tell your CIO that, "I would love to do this request for you, but as part of this power outage, I lost my Checkpoint Smart Center server. And it's going to take me 30, 45 minutes, and it may be longer if I'm putting out other fires in the network before I can honor your request." And that's just not good enough in most situations. And we need to be able to have a quicker fashion of recovering from a disaster like this. And that's where Management HA is going to be your saving grace. You can set up a secondary Smart Center server at maybe another building on your campus that's on a different power grid, or maybe you have an office across town, or even maybe even at your house. If you live, 20 or 30 minutes from your office, you could set up a secondary Smart Center server there and then set up a direct VPN tunnel to keep everything nice and secure between your home and your office, for example. So let's look at configuring a secondary Smart Center server and attaching it to our smart dashboard to our primary Nugget server, for example, or Nugget management server. So we're going to open up PuTTY. I went ahead and installed a base level of secure platform on a machine, and it's going to be 10.20.1.21. is going to be the IP address of our secondary management server. So let's go ahead and log in, and we're going to configure this now. Alright, so we're going to authenticate. Alright, looks good. So I went ahead and set up a host name here of Nugget Management-Backup. So let's do a sysconfig. And we'll do next. So the host name is good. Domain name, let's set that. And that's going to be nuggetlab.com. Looks good. E to exit. Alright, domain name server. So let's set those. And in this case, we're going to use one of the public ones, which is 4.2.2.2. Okay. And that looks good. So let's go ahead and check out our network connections at this point. We know that we have our current configuration of 1020.1.21, so that looks fine. So we could do option number 5, and if we just wanted to check it out, we could hit option number 1, and we could see that ETH0 is configured for that IP address. So we'll do E to exit, and let's check out our routing. And on our routing option, we're going to hit option number 5, and that should pull up routing for us. And we're going to tell it to do option number 2 to show us our default gateway. So we can see 10.20.1.1 is our current IP address here for our default gateway. Now we know at this point that this probably isn't going to route for us in this fashion because we have a different default gateway on our firewall. So our current default gateway should be 10.20.1.2. So we need to fix this. So we're going to go do option number 1, and we're going to set default gateway to 10.20.1.2. Okay, looks good. Do a 2 to verify. Alright, looks fine. E to exit. Go next. Let's set our time zone. And for me, it's going to be 2 for Americas, 45 for the US, 9 for Central Time, and 1 to approve it. So that looks good. And that'll set up that portion of it. So we'll select N for next. And we'll hit an N for next again. And next again. And then we'll agree to the license agreement. We're going to use Checkpoint Power. We'll select next. It's going to be a new installation. And we're going to tell it it's going to be a Smart Center server. So it's going to be option number 3. And we're going to do next. But we're going to tell it it's going to be a secondary Smart Center server. So it's going to be option number 2. We'll select next here. And we're not using the connector plugin, so that can go. We'll select next. Next again. And this will just take a couple minutes for it to install the Smart Center server. And what we're going to see here, which is different than most situations when installing a primary management server, we're going to get the option for a SIC key, just like we would whenever we're installing a Checkpoint firewall or a Checkpoint Eventia product for that matter. So we need to set up a secondary object inside of our dashboard, and we're going to need to set up a SIC key on this install in order to get SIC set up between the two management servers. So let's just give us a couple seconds here to finish the installation, and then we'll continue on with our discussion on Management HA. Alright, so we can see we've reached the point where it's asking us about licensing. For now, I'm going to say no to that. We'll add a licensing later on. And it's going to do the random pull situation just like a firewall would, but it's going to ask us to enter the SIC key we were talking about. So let's go ahead and put that in. Alright, it's going to ask us, do we want to start the Checkpoint products now? We'll select yes to this. And that completes pretty much the command line side of things. And we can just hit enter, and we're back to our Nugget management server for backup. So let's go ahead and do exit. We're going to log out. And then we're going to go into our actual smart dashboard and set up our object. So let's do that now as well. So let's close off of this particular PuTTY window and open up our smart dashboard and connect to our Nugget management server. Alright, so it's loading the configuration. It should just take a second for it to load up for us. Alright, so it looks good. Now what we need to do is we need to right click on network objects, and we need to select new checkpoint host. You don't get the option for secondary gateway, but you use checkpoint host. So what we're going to put in here is the name of the object, which is nugget management backup, and the IP on it is 10.20.1.21. and if you had DNS or something set up in your environment, you could do the get address option. But for now, I'm just going to manually type this in. We're going to set this to green. Communication. So now we need to set our SIC key. So let's go ahead and put that in, just like we would on a firewall. And let's initialize that. Alright, trust established. So test SIC status, it says it's communicating. We're in good shape. So we'll click close on that. Now we need to come down to our checkpoint products area, and we need to select that this is a secondary smart center server. And look what it tells you. It's going to pop up and it says pay attention. It says the smart center server needs special, secure, internal communication, which is different from a usual node SIC. In order to define a node as a secondary smart center server, you need to complete the following steps. Reset SIC. Check this node as a secondary smart center server and initialize a new SIC key for it. So it tells you everything that you need to do there, and it's going to prompt you off the bat. So that's a good saving grace when setting up a Nugget management server as a secondary HA management option. So let's hit OK there. So we've completed all those options. We have that in place. We've set up, reset our SIC. We checked this node as a secondary smart center server, and we initialize a new SIC for it. So we should be in good shape here. So all we should have to do is click OK here. And it says no checkpoint products are selected, so we need to select no on here, and let's look here. So we need to check secondary smart center server, and we need to select log server, and it's going to prompt us here a couple times, so let's get both of those selected and continue on from here. So I had to go ahead and reset SIC on the management server via the cpconfig menu. And as it told us there, it's a little bit different than setting up SIC with a standard object or a firewall object. So what we have to do in order to get a secondary management server to work correctly for us, we have to take an additional step here where we're going to select a secondary management server or secondary smart center, and as we can see, it's automatically going to choose log server. And once we do that, then we need to set our SIC key. I got off for a second there. It's been a little bit since I've done one of these. So let's go ahead and put the VPN password in here that we're going to use for our secure internal communication, and we'll initialize this. And it says trust established, so it looks good, it's communicating. We'll hit close here, and that looks correct, and that's the way it should look. We have our secondary smart center, we have our SIC established, and now we can select OK. So we'll save this current policy right here, and this is a good time to go ahead and make sure you save everything, and then we need to set up a actual synchronization between our Nugget management server and our backup server. So let's do that now. So we need to select policy and then management high availability, and under here what do we have? We have our primary management server, it's active, and we have our secondary Nugget management server backup, and the status that we see is never synced. So what you need to do whenever you set up your Nugget management server, or your secondary Nugget management server we should say, you have to manually sync the secondary server the first time you set it up. So what you do is you highlight the secondary server and we select synchronize. And this is going to take a second for it to actually go through and sync the database, the objects, everything that's part of your ICA and your certificate of authority and everything between the two management servers. So you can usually estimate about 10 to 15 minutes on a really large checkpoint firewall policy before this will get done. But let's give it a second here and we should be complete. And as we can see, it just flipped to synchronized. And we see that it's standby. So that's great. We have a server name, a type. Is it reachable? Oh yeah, it says yes it is. Mode, standby, synchronized, we're good. So that looks fine. We can refresh from this menu. We can change it to the standby, and we can do a manual synchronization. So we hit close right here. And now let's look at some additional options for using our management HA. Under our actual policy, we're going to select global properties and then management high availability. So we have some options here that you need to look at and think about setting in your own organization. It's to select the method by which the Smart Center server will be synchronized. Will we do an automatic synchronization when policy is installed? Additional events to activate automatic synchronization. If you install a lot of policies, I'm not going to recommend that you do this. And if you have a very large policy, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and do it via a scheduled event. Of course, we can do it every time a policy is saved. We can do it automatically, but I'm going to recommend that we, on a scheduled event, every night at midnight, go ahead and do an automatic synchronization between my primary and my secondary management server. And it's what we're going to see is a type of notification for management hot availability tracking is going to be a pop-up alert. So let's go ahead and hit OK here for now. We'll go ahead and save our current policy. We're going to select File. We're going to exit. We're going to open Smart Dashboard, but we're going to actually log in to the secondary Smart Center server with our same credentials. And let's see what happens. And right off the bat, we get another fingerprint. So we know we're in good shape. It's checking the security for us. We're going to approve that. And we get our pop-up. And it asks us, our Nugget secondary backup server here for Nugget management is currently standby. What do we want to do? We want to change to active. And it says your Smart Center server is not synchronized with its peers. Are you sure you want to change it to active? So we'll say yes to this for now. And we'll have it come up here. And then we're going to go out and force a synchronization, because maybe it didn't grab everything the first time it synced. And like I said, on a security policy install, it's going to take a little bit for everything to sync between the two, but you get the general idea of how all this is supposed to work at this point. So let's go ahead and go in and enforce one at this point. So we'll select policy, we'll select management HA, we'll highlight the secondary one, and we'll do this. We'll do secondary. We'll choose synchronize. And it says at least one Smart Center server peer is in advanced or collision state. Are you sure you want to continue? So what is advanced and collision state all about? And this is a good time to discuss the various states that are available in Management HA. So let's cover those. As you saw already, never been synchronized is what you're going to see as soon as you install it. And then you're going to see synchronized whenever you force a synchronization or if it happens on its own. We might see lagging from time to time, and what lagging is that the peer Smart Center server has never been synchronized properly. For instance, maybe you've made some changes on your secondary server and it never got written to your primary server. And then you may also see the option of advanced, which is what we see here. And that basically states that the secondary Smart Center server is more up to date. So what we want to do is go ahead and select yes here, that we want to continue, because we want to go ahead and get the synchronization between the two complete. So as we can see, it's going to be synchronizing at this point. If we pull over this menu and it says synchronize. So Nugget management synchronized. The Nugget backup server is active. And whenever you see a collision states, the last option that you could potentially see, that's basically going to state that the active Smart Center server and its backup peer have a different installed policies. And that's why you would see a collision in this particular menu. So let's go ahead and close out of here for now, because we have the two synchronized, we have our secondary in place, and let's see policy, and let's see if we can do an actual install from our secondary server. So it's going to do a verification, and we're going to push the policy out and see if we can install to our secondary server. Like in our example, maybe we were able to run to the campus across the way or home and be able to actually get policy pushed out to all of our firewalls in our organization. While we are rebuilding our primary Smart Center server, we can use our secondary server as our option for installing all of our firewall policies. And that's where Management HA is going to be beautiful for you. Let's see what we're getting here. It's saying installation failed. And what it's saying is the installation failed for reason TCP connectivity failure port on 18.191. And you will see that occasionally for 10.20.1.2 is what it's saying. It can't talk to the actual firewall at this point. So let's check that out and find out exactly why it can't do that. So let's close off here. And from time to time, these things are going to pop up for you, and you just need to work through them. So let's go ahead and open up this particular firewall object, check our communication, see what we have here. And usually whenever you get this, it's because you don't have a active SIC connection that it can actually read. So let's go and take a look at exactly what's happening and resolve our issue. So we're going to go ahead and do a close on here for now, because this isn't going to work out for us, and we're going to have to go in and do a little bit of troubleshooting here. But this is good. This is the kind of things that you will see on a network from time to time when trying to get management HA up and running. And it's going to say check that the checkpoint daemon is running on the Nugget management server and that the TCP connectivity is allowed between the two. So let's close this for now, hit OK. We're going to minimize this, and we're going to actually go ahead and get out of this particular dashboard for now. So let's save our changes. Let's get out, and we're going to go ahead and open up a PuTTY menu, open this up, and open up our primary firewall for now. Let's go ahead and open up the PuTTY actual menu here. We'll log in, put our password in. Alright, so let's see what's going on here. Let's see, from here, can we get to our secondary management server? Alright, so we have IP level connectivity coming this way. So it must be an issue with the actual SIC situation that's set up between the two. Let's try to log into our primary and see what it looks like there. So let's go into 20. Alright, and it's going to say that this one is standby. Let's change it to active. Alright, looks good. Save that. And let's check our actual SIC status at this point. So communication, test SIC status. It says communicating. Alright, so it likes its primary Smart Center server at this point. Let's do a policy, choose Management HA, choose our secondary, and it says synchronized. So it's kind of giving us false information here, because it's acting like it can't find this server, but it says synchronized. So let's try to force that one more time, the actual synchronization process, and we'll let that run. It says synchronized. So we'll close out of here. Let's save this policy for now, choose File, Exit, and then from this management server, let's just check our connectivity again, or from this firewall to our secondary management server. So we see that at this point we have connectivity going back and forth between the two. So what we want to set up here, and this is a very good point that you can do whenever you're having these type of issues in your own organization. So you do a TCP dump -I on the particular interface that would face that individual network. So we would do an IP ADDR to verify, and as we can see, it's going to be our ETH2 interface. So what we're going to do is a TCP dump -I ETH2 for host 10.20.1.21. Alright, so let's get that in place. We have it running. And now let's try to log into our Nugget management server, or our secondary one, and see exactly what happens via our TCP dump. Alright, so we got that menu. Let's check the firewall, and let's see exactly what we're going to see here whenever this happens. As we go to log in, it's going to immediately issue from this particular machine right here, the 10.20.1.22. It's going to look at, it's trying to talk to 1021.21 on port 18190 is what it's saying. So what we're going to do is we need to check a couple things here and verify that we get connectivity through our system properly. These two right here, everything right here looks pretty normal. That looks perfectly normal, that we're going to see port 18190. We're going to see a dynamic high port from the machine we're on, our host, talking to that particular Nugget management server on that port of 18190. So that looks normal. So let's go back, and we're going to say right now it's secondary. Let's go ahead and say change to active. And it should just take a second. We'll change it to active, and let's save it, and then we'll do a policy verify. Let's verify our security policy, and then we will look at everything looks okay. So we're going to try to install that security policy. We'll select install here, and let's just see what happens this time. Well, it's going to verify the policy, and then hopefully it'll go through and install it for us this time from our secondary management server. And alright, we have success. Well, it looks like we probably were dealing with some momentarily sick loss between the two management servers. Maybe it hasn't completed its actual synchronization process, and I was a little too quick with trying to force the whole synchronization with the management HA. So that should take care of that for now. So I'm going to test this theory a couple more times here because I wasn't real happy with that initial pop-up about the sick error that popped up. But let's go ahead and test it a couple more times and see how things are going to work for us. So it installed correctly from our secondary management server. Let's go ahead and get out of here for now, jump back into our primary, and check things out there. Okay, we're going to log in, and it says that this primary is currently the standby. Let's change it to active. Alright, looks good. And the first thing we're going to want to do is just basically check our SIG status. Is it communicating? It is. Great. So let's go ahead and try to deploy policy from our primary one. And we'll try to deploy that out to this particular firewall from our primary management server. This should load fine. And we're in great shape there. Alright, so let's go ahead and get out of here again, and we're going to go to our secondary management server again and see if everything is working properly. I just want to make sure that we're 100% confident that this process is working the way it should be with the software, and I don't want to leave anything out. So right now the Nugget management backup is standby. Let's change it to active. Let it log in. We're on the 21 box. Let's go ahead and check our communication with this particular box. It's communicating. Great. So now we should be able to push policy from the secondary management server. We're going to push it out, and it's going to verify. It's installing. And alright, there we go. We have 100% success with Management HA. So we have the ability to totally recover our company in a quick fashion should we lose one of our management servers due to a natural disaster or something along those lines. You have recoverability. And this is something I recommend for large organizations. If you have offices on a West Coast or East Coast, have one management server in one place, one management server in another place, or some kind of separate locations for your particular management servers is the point I want to make. So that looks great. Management HA is working beautifully for us, and it's running in our Nugget Lab organization. In this Nugget, we covered management high availability. We saw exactly why we need to deploy Management HA in our organization. We also saw management concepts for deploying that HA configuration of our Smart Center server. And we looked at the Management HA configuration via the command line as well as inside of our Smart Dashboard application. And we have full redundancy in place for pushing policy to our firewalls using the Management HA application. So I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.